Hi, Jon Velie, CEO of OnlineVisas, and it's Friday. So this is another episode of How to Practice Law in a Hawaiian Shirt. Today I'm drinking a Mexican Coke. Delicious, not having a beer yet, but maybe we'll save that for later. Anyway, I want to talk about two things today. One is a Supreme Court case, McGirt versus Oklahoma, that came down, dealing with some Native American issues. We'll talk about that. The other is I wanted to express some opinions on the president's issue, or I wasn't really the president as much as it is the White House and it's the ICE, but how they're going to do with foreign students and what foreign students are going to have to go through. We talked about that on one of our Voice of Immigration sessions, so we'll break into that. So I think I'll pull my sunglasses up a little bit. So McGirt versus Oklahoma, what is that, right? So prior to Oklahoma's statehood, the area that is now present-day Oklahoma was called the Indian Territory. And it was called the Indian Territory because the United States removed Native Americans from around the U.S. and moved them to Oklahoma. This is my home state. There are 39 tribes in Oklahoma. And McGirt versus Oklahoma had to do with criminal jurisdiction in the Creek Nation, the Muskogee Creek Nation. And it turns out that Neil Gorsuch, the Trump appointee, ruled in a 5-4 decision that the Congress never abrogated the Treaty of 1866 regarding the boundaries of the Creek Reservation. So it means that the Creek Reservation still exists, and that includes it's a very big reservation, parts of Tulsa and other, many towns in Oklahoma. And so this only had to do with criminal jurisdiction, but if the reservation wasn't extinguished by any law that helped to create Oklahoma, then that jurisdiction would not be limited to that. And the dissent, and what a dissent is the 4 Supreme Court justices that did not rule in favor of this, raised the issue that this ruling could be interpreted to affect all sorts of laws, and they listed family law, they listed taxation, they listed zoning, and all sorts of things. So that would mean that no longer is that Oklahoma, but it's the Creek Reservation, and there's many Oklahomans that live there. Many people that are not citizens of the Muskogee Creek Nation are residents there, and in Oklahoma's second largest city in Tulsa. So it also stands to reason that if the Treaty of 1866 for the Creek Nation is in full force and effect, then the other treaties of 1866, which are the Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole, and Chickasaw nations, are as well. And we know that because I argued that the Treaty of 1866 for the Cherokee Nation and the Seminole Nation were in full force of effect when we helped win cases that entitled the descendants of slaves and other freed blacks living in those areas were entitled to full citizenship in those tribes. And we were successful on that. And our case went up to Supreme Court briefly and then was decided by the D.C. District Court a number of years ago, 2017. So, no surprises that happened. But if those reservations were not extinguished, were any of the reservations extinguished in Oklahoma? And there are 39 tribes. It is literally, there are 77 counties in Oklahoma. Only 2 of them were not the sites of any reservations, and that's Oklahoma County and Cleveland County. I live in Cleveland County, where the University of Oklahoma is, and the city of Norman and more are. Oklahoma County is where Oklahoma City is, and those are the 2. That's the first largest city and the 3rd largest city. So it's a population pretty big for Oklahoma as far as the rest of the state. It's a pretty rural state. So, we're probably about 1 million to 1.5 million people in that area. But the state would only be like, 60 miles tall and 30 to 40 miles wide. It'd be tiny state. And what would that mean, right? If Oklahoma isn't any of those areas, and those are reservations of tribes, then how many congressmen does Oklahoma lose? And it's a pretty interesting thing. And how would we vote as a population? It's an interesting fact to see where it goes. Anyway, just wanted to raise that up. So a big decision by the Supreme Court dealing with the Creek Nation, Muskogee Creek Nation, and its reservation, and what may come out of it. Pretty interesting stuff. Now, I'm angry. I'm an angry guy right now. I am angry about what's happened to foreign students. As an immigration attorney, I don't really deal with students as part of my profession, but I deal with them a lot because I'm the director at rugby at the University of Oklahoma, and I have a lot of friends and players that come through here that are international students. I'm also a fan of universities, and this really hurts. So this ruling came down, and you might check on our Voice of Immigration on what that means. But in essence, there were some COVID-related protections to students that came out, during the earliest part of this pandemic that allowed them to take all their classes online, because almost every school just sent all the kids home, right? And they had to continue that on. And they've gotten rid of that. So you can't, if you're on a full online situation, you cannot be in the United States anymore. You have to leave and go back to your home country, even if you're here already. And if you don't, then you can be deported. That's horrible. The second thing is that there are some where you can't just take one class that's online. And now there's a hybrid scenario that I think some schools will figure out how to do that'll keep their kids here to a certain degree. But man, what a deterrent this is for our universities. And that's what I'm frustrated with. America has the greatest universities in the world. It's really not even close. I don't know if you've ever studied it, but if you look at the U.S. News and World Report, and they do, they rank the best universities in the U.S. and the best universities in the world. And on their world ranking, last time I looked at it, 8 of the top 10 universities in the world were American universities. 6 and 7 were Oxford and Cambridge, and the rest were Americans. So 1 through 5, and then 8 and 9. Great schools: Harvard, Yale, Cal Berkeley. Some really good schools. Stanford. I've done that. Now, so this is where you come if you want to get the best education in the world. And because of the tough immigration laws in general, that less students are wanting to come anyway, right? They see that they're going to have a difficulty staying here, and they're just not coming. We've seen about a quarter of the number of kids or students from India and China. And we're talking about $1 billion in tuition revenue there. And this new thing that's going to make it even harder is going to make that worse. And they're talking about, really hurting the OPT ability to do that. Now, that still exists right now. But there's been a lot of discussion to scrap that or make it a lot more difficult. We've seen comments of only leaving it to the top 15% of the students and those sort of things. Now, you know what? That's really going to hurt our schools. The people that pay the most money to go to American universities are foreign students who are not green card holders. The out-of-state, out-of-country tuition is the highest by far, and they really keep a lot of our schools going. Public schools need it because they basically lower the tuition for the in-state students, and they're not making a lot of money there. So it's really the foreign student and the out-of-state students that pay it, but the foreign students pay more than the out-of-state students. And that's going to hurt them. And we've already, they're under some stresses. We saw yesterday that Stanford, a Pac-12 university with a great sporting tradition, has decided to get rid of 11 of its 27, I believe, varsity sports. 11 sports are gonna be gone from Stanford University, and that's a shame. And to me, that seems that'll be contagious. Now, we've already seen the Ivy League teams decide they're not going to play football, but that's COVID based. But if football isn't played, then there's a lot of money that's going to be lost to these universities. And then you put that on top of not having the foreign tuition coming in. What if we start seeing our great universities bankrupt, stop being universities? Wouldn't that be horrible? What are we doing here? I mean, do we not want to be the best in the world? I mean, what political party thinks that's a good idea? What person that went to a university isn't proud of their university? Why do they want to see that? I mean, there's such a negative right now against education. I mean, it's really a bad scenario, and I just wish it would stop. So I'm mad about that, and I think we need some cooler heads to step in and say, come on. Our universities need us. We need to let the foreign students come here. Those that are here going to school right now, telling them they have to leave and they can't take online courses, how does that help anybody? That's not a safety concern. I mean, they're already here. Those are just my thoughts for today. I'm Jon Velie. I'm practicing law in a Hawaiian shirt, and we deliver dreams.